Hello and welcome back to Nerdy Nerds. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to discuss Empyreans and their Shadowbound Beasts, and try to put our two fingers on why not all Empyreans are treated the same in this regard. This is a subject I find truly intriguing as it feels fully open to speculation and interpretation, so if you will, join me as we explore the shadows of the Empyreans, or should I say, lack thereof. First, I want to reiterate what a Shadowbound Beast is. As most of you are already aware, they are wolf half-beasts created in the shadow of an Empyrean to aid them in carrying out the will of the Two Fingers. We know that shadows take the form of wolves due to Vargrim the Raging Wolf's armour stating, "Armour worn by Vargrim the Raging Wolf, one of the first tarnished to visit the Round Table Hold." According to old legends, wolves are the shadows of the Empyrean. Vargrim aspired to such a state himself. However, if an Empyrean chooses not to follow the will set out for them, then the shadows will take the form of baleful shadows and act as assassins for the Two Fingers. Baleful shadows can also be sent additionally by the Two Fingers, despite the existence of the current Shadowbound Beasts. We know this by following Rani's questline and coming toe-to-toe with her baleful shadow. This baleful shadow looks identical to Rani's Shadowbound Beast Blythe, and although they look the same, we know this attacker to be an imposter. We know this for two reasons. The first reason is that we find a black wolf mask behind Seluvis' rise, and the description states, "A mask fashioned after the head of a black wolf, relic of an assassin who assumed the guise of Rani the Witch's loyal shadow. The likeness is striking." Another clue is that Rani asks us to tell Blythe and E.G. she loves them directly after the fight with the baleful shadow. Something she wouldn't do if Blythe was the actual attacker. At least, she would word this very differently. One thing I will say is that the mask may not be from a baleful shadow. The reason I have doubts about this is that the baleful shadow we meet in the depths of the Ainsel River is an invader, and thus, upon defeat, doesn't leave a body. And it's not like Rani doesn't have other enemies, but that's all for another time. There are two Shadowbound Beasts that we know of. They are Blythe, as previously mentioned, who is Rani's shadow, and probably the most famous of all being Malekith, Marika's shadow. Both shadows were assigned to the Empyrean Masters by the Two Fingers at a very young age, and became sibling-like figures. We know this to be true for both Blythe and Malekith. Stated in the description for Malekith's armour, it says, "Malekith, Queen Marika's loyal half-brother, bore a blade imbued with destined death, and there was not one demigod who did not fear him." As for Blythe, E.G. the War Counsellor gives us insight to this.
Blythe is Lady Rani's stepbrother. Rani's mother, Queen Renala, approved of him, and they played like siblings from childhood. They were always happy to have me tag along as well.
There is, however, a glaring difference in both explanations of their connections. Blythe is described as a stepbrother, a fitting description for someone who is essentially an adopted son. Malekith, however, is described as a half-brother. This makes me think there is some sort of blood relation between Marika and Malekith, and following the example set forth by the family lineages of Elden Ring, the matching initials insinuate this further. But Malekith's remembrance contradicts this theory by stating, "Malekith was a Shadowbound Beast given to his Empyrean. Marika's sole need of her shadow was a vessel to lock away destined death. Even then, she betrayed him." So the wording of half-brother is most likely a bad translation from Japanese to English. Now, I've mentioned the word Empyreans a fair few times in this discussion, and we've spoken about Marika and Rani being Empyreans, and this resulted in them gaining their Shadowbound Beasts. But what is an Empyrean? Well, an Empyrean is an individual capable of becoming God, chosen by their Two Fingers to put forth a new age. In the case of Marika, she became the vassal of the Elden Ring, although whether she was born as an Empyrean or chosen at a young age is debated. During Marika's rise, she would encounter another Empyrean, the Gloam-eyed Queen. The Gloam-eyed Queen was chosen by her own Two Fingers to be an Empyrean, and we know this due to the description of the Black Flame ritual incantation. The Gloam-eyed Queen led the Apostles. It is said that she was an Empyrean chosen by the Fingers. She was the leader of the Godskin Apostles and had power over the god-slaying Black Flame, sharing this power with the Apostles. It was her defeat to Malekith by order of Marika that brought an end to destined death. This was done by Malekith binding the Rune of Death with his blade and sealing it within his own body. All explained by the Godskin Apostles' robe description. The Apostles, once said to serve destined death, are wielders of the god-slaying Black Flame, but after their defeat by Malekith the Black Blade, the source of their power was sealed away. This to me begged the first question. Where was the Gloam-eyed Queen's shadow to defend her? As the Gloam-eyed Queen is an Empyrean, you would assume she would have had one, no? Well, to attempt to answer this, I must delve into the other known Empyreans.
I was once an Empyrean, of the demigods. Only I, Miquella, and Malenia could claim that title. Each of us was chosen by our own two fingers, as a candidate to succeed Queen Marika, to become the new god of the coming age.
So as Rani explained, she was chosen to be an Empyrean, and so was Malenia and Miquella, by their own two fingers. Well, we know Rani has her own shadow, so then we look at Malenia and Miquella. These two seemingly share the same fate as the Gloam-eyed Queen, and do not have their own Shadowbound Beasts. Initially, my thinking for Malenia and Miquella not having shadows was because of their parents. Being born of Radagon and Marika meant that they were born of only Empyrean blood. Seeing as Radagon is Marika, they would both hold Empyrean status. Thus, their offsprings would be granted Empyrean status by blood alone, whereas the Greater Will chose Rani much like he chose Marika. However, based off of what Rani said, that they were chosen by their own two fingers, it seems that they were chosen for a reason, and didn't necessarily inherit the title of Empyrean. Now, this could be a matter of the two fingers choosing based off of a proven gene pool, but if this was the case, any of Marika's children could have been chosen. And more to the point, it seems Messmer was Marika's first child, birthed prior to Marika entering the Lands Between. Messmer has the same red hair as Radagon, so you would assume that this was the first instance of Marika creating life with her male counterpart. Although this is speculation, it does seem plausible, as he too has a curse much like his brother and sister Miquella and Malenia, his being his infestation of snakes, though there is no mention of Messmer being an Empyrean. Another thought process was down to sheer power and influence, but if this was the case you would think that Radahn would be a prime candidate, although his recent antics with Miquella might explain why he wasn't chosen. So what is it that is keeping Malenia, Miquella and the Gloam-eyed Queen from being granted shadows? Well, I think the answer might be in the wording of Rani's statement. Each were chosen by their own two fingers. This is also true for the Gloam-eyed Queen. So what's different about these two fingers that they do not supply their vassals with shadows? I believe this could be something to do with the outer gods. There is two ways to look at this. The first is the possibility of the various two fingers being connected to different outer gods. As we know, the three fingers are the vassals of the Frenzied Flame, and although you may point out the obvious, that there is three fingers, I believe this is more of an indication to the fact that the Frenzied Flame deals in chaos, and the fingers it would commune with would match this ideal. The three fingers also seem to pre-exist the Greater Will, due to its dislike for the actions of the Greater Will, and want for the Lands Between to return to its chaotic state prior to the arrival of the Greater Will. But this does show that a different set of fingers does commune with its own outer god, so is this the same for some of the two fingers? Now we have to look at this objectively through each of the Empyreans. Marika's two fingers are vassals for the Greater Will. We know this because of her connection to the Elden Ring, the Elden Ring being the literal beast sent to the Lands Between by the Greater Will, known also as the Elden Beast. We also know that Rani's two fingers are vassals for the Greater Will, and this is because of the weapon that she requires to kill her two fingers, the Finger-Slaying Blade. The description states, "The hidden treasure of the eternal city of Nokron, a blade said to have been born of a corpse. This blood-drenched fetish is proof of a high treason committed by the eternal city and symbolises its downfall. Cannot be wielded by those without a fate, but is said to be able to harm the Greater Will and its vassals." This wording also makes me believe that the Greater Will's two-finger vassals are almost invulnerable to other forms of damage, other than that supplied by this blade. Which takes me to another of the Empyrean candidates, Malenia. I believe it's possible for Malenia's two fingers to have been vassals for the sealed god of Scarlet Rot, chosen by her two fingers who saw her ascension to godhood by becoming the goddess of Rot, and we witness her elevation to this status during our encounter with Malenia. Then we have the Gloam-eyed Queen. This is purely speculation as we have little information on the history of her as a whole, but I believe she may have had an outer god that would invoke destined death and share that power with her. Some people speculate that the Gloam-eyed Queen herself is an outer god, but I believe it's unlikely she would have had her interactions with Marika and Malekith if she was an outer god herself. However, we did fight the Elden Beast at the end of the main campaign, and that's pretty close, so this is pure speculation. And the final known Empyrean is Miquella. This one to me is far different from the others. It seems that Miquella may have been chosen by the greater will, but was capable of removing that influence without aid. This is evident with Miquella's needle description, stating, "One of the unalloyed gold needles that Miquella crafted to ward away the meddling of outer gods. Capable of subduing the flame of frenzy if inherited, allowing one to cheat fate and avoid becoming the lord of frenzied flame. However, the needle is as yet unfinished and can only be used in the heart of the storm beyond time, said to be found in Farum Azula. Going through the Empyreans, it would seem to be those mostly influenced by the greater will were granted shadows, which is why Malenia and the Gloamide Queen were not. In the case of Miquella, I believe it is highly likely that he was granted a shadow, but upon his decision to break away from the influence of the greater will, and his ability to do so being so powerful, that his connection was broken clean. His shadow would have simply lost its purpose, and the greater will would not have sent baleful shadows, as it no longer bore any influence in Miquella's life, simply letting Miquella go free. The other way to look at it is that each of the two fingers do commune with the greater will, but simply gave up upon realising that their Empyreans were unfit, and in losing their communication, died. We can find dead husks of two fingers upon all but one of the divine towers. The only one to not home dead two fingers is the divine tower of Leonia, which has the dead body of Rani, who we later find with her slayed fingers at the end of her questline, so it's possible that she may have had her two fingers relocated. We find Malenia's dead two fingers with her great rune at the top of the isolated divine tower. We do not, however, find the two fingers of Miquella. Some believe that Malenia's two fingers are shared with Miquella, much like Morgott and Mohg, but the way Rani states that they were each chosen by their own two fingers says to me that they all had their own. Rani's two fingers being alive and still sending baleful shadows says to me that her two fingers are truly adamant of her becoming the new god of a coming age, whereas Malenia's being dead almost feels like if the two fingers were being led by the greater will, the presence of the rot within Malenia became too much to bear, and even sending baleful shadows wouldn't do much good, as it would not cure the rot, neither would it be much of a threat to Malenia, who was a lethal sorceress to say the least. So her fingers would have wilted away with no future in sight. Even if there was ever a shadow, it would have lost its mind long ago, and possibly fallen to Malenia's blade. And as for Miquella, I don't think his story would have been any different from my prior theory. He can simply disconnect from any influence from the outer gods, rendering Miquella a lost cause for their efforts. Much is up for speculation, we simply do not have enough answers, but I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are in the comments, and hopefully I've sparked some ideas in your minds. Ladies and gentlemen, remember, if you like this video, like the video, and subscribe for more content. Thank you for watching, and may the greater will shine this light on you. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!
If you enjoyed that video, why not subscribe?
If you enjoyed that video, why not subscribe? It'll help me and Natty continue to do the work that we're doing, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. Thanks!